we are going to start by calling you into a conversation, Jared.
Yeah, I think that we wanted to start with kind of talking about calling in versus calling out when we're trying to reach out to people. I think you have resources, I have resources. I'll start with mine because I feel like they're a little bit more simple, and then we'll go into yours, which are a little bit more grounded in the literature, I suppose. I don't know. So that's
Subjective. We can talk about that.
yeah. So I just found this really cool guide online a while back. I guess it's from Harvard's Diversity of Inclusion and Belonging. I don't even know if that still exists anymore. Um, but at the time, I found that this was useful. So, calling in and calling out in fostering spaces of inclusion and belonging, it is important to recognize, name, and address when individuals or groups with marginalized identities are experiencing harm, such as bias or discrimination. These concepts of calling out or calling in have become popular ways of thinking about how to bring attention to this type of harm. Knowing the difference between these concepts can help us reflect, then act in ways we feel best promote constructive change. So, what is calling in and calling out? Calling in is an invitation to a one-on-one or small group conversation to bring attention to an individual or group's harmful words or behavior, including bias, prejudice, microaggressions, and discrimination. Calling out is bringing public attention to an individual, group, or organization's harmful words or behavior. So, why should you call someone in or out? To stop the perpetuation and negative effects of harmful words or behavior, to create compassionate space for listening, understanding, offering new information, and correcting assumptions, and to lean into having tough conversations with people in your sphere of influence, the individuals or groups you know personally, and that will be open to conversation with you. Note, calling in and calling out are not mutually exclusive strategies. Depending upon the situation, calling out could precede calling someone in for follow-up conversation. I think that it also had some good stuff about what should I consider when calling in, like in when calling in or calling out, such as calling in influence, safety, and openness, and calling out urgency, influence, and safety and openness. And then it kind of talks about how do I call in or call out. We'll share all of these resources in the notes. And then it had one more part talking about patience, safe care, self care, finding allies, and then also what to do when someone calls me in or calls me out. I think this is really good. Pause when someone calls you in, calls you out. Listen, acknowledge, reflect, repair the harm done. Don't beat yourself up or go on a shame spiral. Try to be kind to yourself. Don't make the person calling you in or out be your emotional caretaker. And remember, you're not a bad person. You are an ever changing and evolving person. This is just one step in your growth. So I think that that resource was really helpful from what I have.
I love because those resources that you had shared had what to do versus what not to. We've had that conversation quite a bit where if we have an alternative behavior, then we have direction to go. But it's funny, it's like I didn't have the realization as we were kind of discussing this before we started recording, but as you were discussing just now, I was like, okay, so part of my diagnoses influences how I interact in these spaces. And I struggle with call ins. I'm much better at call outs. But I think it's because I have avoidant personality disorder. I don't want to have those awkward one on ones. I don't want to have to be like, hey, what you did was wrong, or what you did hurt a community, or whatever. Instead, I will divert and I will go to the public. And I find that so interesting because I'm sure I'm like opposite of everybody in that regard because people don't want to be blasted publicly, but I'm okay doing it. Isn't that weird? I just find that so interesting.
I also think like with the way that the internet works, calling someone out is a lot more likely to occur. We don't see the times when people call in. So there's that.
Right.
But also like if you publicly post something and someone wants to say something about the harm that has done, can do, does, then the most direct way to do is to go into that comment section. I remember this
Mhm.
creator that worked on etymology was talking about the R word is coming back, and everybody was like, no, Like, he's like, the R word is coming back and we got to accept it. And people were like,
Ooh,
absolutely not. You know what I mean? And everybody was
yeah.
calling him out. Some people may have called him in. But when harm is done in public, sometimes you're going to get the public to, kind of call you out. And then also, if you do harm in public, the apology needs to be as big as the harm, or you need to try to make it as big as the harm by making, when appropriate, the apology in public as well. The reconciliation in public as well. It should match public to public, private to private, when appropriate.
Right. That's a really good point because then I started doubting, okay, well, if we do our call outs for harm, especially within the field of ABA through Nirava, is that something we should be doing, or should we go per the BACB? Should we go to that person first? And even if I don't know the person, hey, by the way, I saw that you did something harmful years ago. How do we feel about that? But if we've seen like no restorative action or reparative action, then we'll go share it because it's like, hey, you just need to know that this person is still practicing or whatever. But I also see now that we're kind of discussing this a little more, calling in can be a really good first step. Not that I
Hmm.
want to give the BACB credit in any way, shape, or form for any of this, but it makes a little more sense as to why that policy is in place. Have you addressed that with the person individually? Have you had that tough conversation? Well, if not, then you're safe to report. Um, I've kind of always kind of interpreted that as kind of a tattletale type thing, or just I see it abused and misused a lot. And so
Hmm.
that's where I kind of have the concern. But if it's done with intention and with good approaches and trying to actually like correct the person who may not be aware of those issues, then I see absolutely no harm in it. So, like you said, context is so important.
Yeah, and one of the things that I agree with as well is um, when you call somebody in first, it's kind of like how journalists might say, "We reached out for comment," and
Right,
sometimes they'll say, "This is what they said," or this they'll say, "And we got no response back." You know what I mean?
right.
You're trying to go to the source to see, like, because maybe somebody like, I think one of the things that I really like is like this guy Anthony Fantano who does these music reviews. A lot of times he'll end up reviewing black music, and he will continuously say, "Yeah, I messed up in the past. I apologized for that then. I apologize for that now." And then he keeps moving on. So it's like he makes it clear where his stance is now from what the previous harm was. And it's really easy to do. I find a lot of people, especially men, have a really hard time apologizing for things
Oh,
when
God,
it's really
yes.
not that big of a deal. So I think that really shows a lot. You know what I mean? And sometimes like we just can't see or can't find the apology as easy as we can see or find the harm. So giving them that opportunity to say that is I think a good and big step. Now, we can talk about different contexts and different harms, and some stuff of course isn't going to fit the mold of what we're trying to
Yeah.
describe. Some harms and problems are so big that they don't fit these constructs. So let's just make sure we have some nuance on this internet conversation where nuance and complexity goes to die.
Beautifully said. And I think we talked about this one of the first times we recorded ever. And we were talking about how an apology can just be an empty phrase or empty words if it's not paired with action to support the apology. As an autistic person, if you say, I'm sorry, but then you continue to do really crappy things, your words are simply words to me and they don't
Mhm.
matter. In fact, I don't even care if you say I'm sorry. I don't care if you apologize. I just want to see you do something different because there's a reason why those behaviors are being called in or called out. And so, yeah, I see it as small talk and I don't have time for that. I just want to see you do the thing. So, yeah, kind of going back, I think it was like the first or second time we ever recorded. So,
Mhm.
it's been a while.
No, definitely. And I think that you said you had a resource that we could critically engage with as well.
I do. Let me share it. Now, I want to have a full disclosure on this because I have not looked at the actual book that we're referencing here. But this is about basically prioritizing calling in instead of calling out because it can help promote really difficult conversations. It can help promote change in behavior a little easier than the name and shame. Um, I could agree with that to some extent because calling out has been met with a lot of resistance based on my own experience with Niraba as a group. Um, but when we do those call outs, it's not like a small scale thing that I think one of these conversations would be productive for. So, if we're talking about the context of like women's rights, for instance, there's a lot of discussion, trigger warning on assault of women and different harm that can happen as part of domestic type situations. So, if that is something that you're sensitive to, then please, fast forward or do whatever you need to do there. Um, but I have a hard time with some of this because you have people with trauma history. You have people who have been gaslit, emotionally manipulated, all of these different manipulative strategies against them. I have been one of them. And so to unlearn some of that, to be able to have these conversations is really challenging. And I also have the bias where it's like, if it has to do with me as a woman, and I'm trying to correct a man who does not have a uterus and has never had a uterus, I have a hard time having a conversation with that person because I feel like you don't have a right to say anything about it. So, like, that is kind of a conversation that we could kind of segue into about what a community is defined by, what are the boundaries within those communities and those spaces. Not saying like men can't have an opinion about these things, but it just seems kind of weird if you have an impact on the decisions that are being made, if you can't relate to that situation. And I have not read this book. I'm going to put it on my list, though, because I'm really interested in what the author has to say about a lot of these situations. But also, there's kind of like a tone policing element to it that it concerns me. And the author appears to be a Black woman. And so I just kind of worry about, okay, you're a woman, you are a woman of color, and you're basically telling people to check their tone, which I know has been kind of traumatic for disabled people, people of color, women. All sorts of intersectional factors can play into that. Now, do I agree that it could be more productive to have those one-on-one conversations? Absolutely, I do. But is it going to harm you mentally? Is it going to harm you emotionally to have those conversations? I think that you're going to have to figure out what those boundaries look like for yourself. And so context as we keep talking. So I'll make sure to share this, though. And then the book is referenced as well that I plan to find through my library. And maybe I can report back more once I kind of get that and read through it.
Yeah, and one of the things that I really agree with you is not everybody's opinion holds the same value for every
Yeah.
topic. So when it comes to women's reproductive rights, men, biological men specifically, your voice is the value of it, the amplitude of it should be turned down substantially compared to someone else who it actually affects more so. Ectopic pregnancies to just, put that out. And then like one of the things ways that I experienced it is when I was talking about the whole do-rags and bonnets
Yes.
in HBCUs. You know who was in my comments mostly?
White men. Old white men.
Old white men. Like, oh, I can't wait to talk about this. This doesn't affect me. This has nothing to do with me, but I really need to get my opinion and point across.
That's a
And
privilege thing.
boy, I'm like,
You made the hurt dogs
boom.
holler.
Exactly. It's like, this guy stinks. It's like, nobody
Oh,
asked you. As a
brother.
matter of fact, you're blocked and comment deleted. You
That's
don't
amazing.
exist. I'm removing your voice.
Oh,
So,
yeah, that's
yeah.
another thing. It's like me as a white person, it's like while I think that it's inappropriate to have any sort of bias in your dressing or dress code or whatever. I just hate dress codes in general. Like as long
Hmm.
as everything that's covered needs to be covered, I'm cool with it.
Yeah,
And
same.
don't be advertising like harm or anything like that. But like who cares if you're wearing a bonnet outside of your dorm or your house or whatever? Like
I do
but
not care.
I am white. And so like my weight should not matter as much as a person of color who, and I do wear a bonnet. I know that
Hmm.
that's probably not great, but I have textured hair. So
No, that's great. That's good. You should.
black women have taught me so much about self-care. It's amazing. So like I am forever grateful to black women.
Yeah. No, so I mean, all of that just gets back to, when it comes to calling in, calling out, some opinions and words and voices are, hold more weight because of their proximity to the concerned population that is being discussed. And then we have to kind of measure, should we, is this a time to call in, or is this a time to call out? How do we call in? How do we call out? What happens when we're called in and called out? A lot of the time, especially on the internet, anonymous voices can seem like criticism rather than helpful feedback for improvement, especially when people are criticizing you and they don't even do the thing that you're doing. That is really frustrating to me. It's like, somebody, who's never played basketball criticizing an NBA player saying, "Oh man, why didn't he just do a 360 dunk on the defender?" It's like, you've never even touched rim, bro. So your comments are, worth less. And you can put those words together or separate them.
Absolutely. And one of my favorite things to do is whenever I see trolls in comments, and this isn't on any of the content that I personally post, but like on your videos, I love to put the mirror around on the person. And so, like, if they're talking about something like physical appearance, it's like, well, look at this picture of you. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you ain't pretty. Like,
Mm-hmm.
you're not a supermodel candidate. Like, why are you talking about somebody else's appearance? And same thing, it's like one of my favorite people to follow on TikTok. She basically takes comments about people judging any sort of like deviant behavior, quote unquote. So anytime that somebody is like, oh, well, they're illegal immigrants or whatever, she'll like go through and she'll figure out like if there's some sort of past or whatever that contradicts what they're actually saying, and I love it. And she records the whole process and finds like court records and all
Mm-hmm.
sorts of stuff. It's like, oh well, people need to be in jail for those sort of things, and it's like, but you didn't serve time for this offense like several years ago. Why are you an exception? And so I just love it. It's the level of snark that I want to be throughout the rest of my life, and it's just beautiful. I love hypocrites being called out. It's so good. So yeah,
Exactly.
sometimes you just gotta do it.
Yeah, whoever came up with the "this you" like reply and just like a picture, "this you," and then a picture damning them for
Yes.
throwing stones in a glass house or from a glass house it's just great. One guy, his name was literally Timmy Turner, and he was
Oh,
commenting on
like
something that I
Fairly Odd
said,
Parents.
and I said "this you," and I put up a picture of Timmy Turner.
It's amazing. I would have put Trixie below. Like, oh, Timmy, I found you.
Yeah, I think it was Timothy Turner, and I was just like, bruh, like you can't be
Timothy
trolling with
Turner.
that name.
No, you can't.
And like,
It's
side note, I don't know how are there so many Facebook profiles. Like, I'm just like, I
bots,
cannot
basically.
block this many. Like, yeah, there are just so many that find my content, but they never find the content that's educational. So, I kind of strategically um juxtapose some of
Hmm.
the more content that they'll find problematic with the straight up educational way above their understanding. And I just like to juxtapose it, so they'll like probably go into my videos and go to my previous video and they're like, I can't really say anything about this one. They
Yeah,
have to keep on going.
that's wild to me because it's like, I've definitely found some bot accounts. I never find bots in my favor though. Is that like
Oh,
a design thing? It's like intentional by design,
can we
but it's
talk about
like,
that?
yes, we can absolutely talk about. I know nothing about it, by the way. So like I'm coming into this completely oblivious. It's you have the floor, my friend.
No, no, I mean just like the fact that there are no good bots. You know what I mean? Like
No.
there are no bots, engaging, improving engagement for positivity that are supporting you unless you pay for them. Like, I guess all the bot farms in getting frustration, riling up anger and resentment and combative fighting and ideologies is
Hmm.
what increases engagement and what people engage with. And if you think about it, like think about when you post and someone says, "Oh, great job, really like this post." You might just like it. And if somebody says, "I disagree for these reasons," you might comment instead of like. So,
Right.
I mean, I guess, behavior reinforcement goes where behavior flows or what have you. But it's just so frustrating. I think I read a article talking about how most of the bots like they found that it's easier to grift on the right. So like you could try to be like a democratic person, try to like, grift or get people to pay for something or buy subscriptions to your account, but people won't do it on the left, whereas people on the right are more likely to, especially if it's a blue-eyed, blonde-haired, you know, girl or woman, they're more likely to, MAGA support it than on the left, no matter what you do.
It's giving the stripper likes me. That's what it's giving.
Exactly. Exactly. I think the waitress wants my number.
Right. And maybe not stripper, maybe dancer. Exotic dancer is probably the correct term. I don't remember which anyway. I want to make sure that I'm respectful of the term
Yeah.
that is preferred. Yeah, that's interesting. But I've definitely like looked through it. I'm like, well, maybe because I've been accused of being a bot before, and it's like, no, like I'm literally giving facts. Maybe it's just easier to troll on the right because you don't have to think. Like you just
No.
literally act on defensiveness, and it's just, oh, well, I can hit below the belt faster than you can. And you don't have to use logic, you don't have to use research, you don't have to use any sort
No
of
stats,
references.
no
Nothing.
references,
It's
just
just,
vibes and racism and bigotry
that's
of all flavors.
that's it. I will say though, like if you're on Reddit, there are some good bots. Like there's like a haiku bot that will pop
Hmm.
in if you like make some
Hmm.
comments or whatever. It'll be like, "Oh, I put this together as a haiku," and
Yeah.
we're all just like, "Oh, good bot."
Yeah.
But those are few and far between. I feel
Yeah.
like more of
And
that.
somebody had to create that bot, and then
Yeah.
that bot is just detects when you have
Hmm.
commented in the syllables for it to be a haiku.
Yeah.
That's that like that's so specific. There's no like, oh,
Yes.
good job, being inclusive.
Hmm.
Good
Yeah.
job pointing out systemic racism. Good job pointing out abuse.
Yeah. That would be so great though. Like just thinking about that, it would take a lot of the work off of us. Maybe that's why we're all so damn tired because we don't have bots to help us with these
No.
processes because they're so complex.
Plus,
I
if
have
you
to
did,
laugh. There's nothing else I can do.
if you did, someone would probably be like, "Hey, how's that bot working? Like, what's the water that costs to make that bot
God, right,
operate?"
right.
you know.
That's
So
true. No, I love the conversation about bots because I've been so curious about it because once again, being accused of being a bot, seeing the profiles on social media with like only two friends, but like tons of content being posted, crap like that. It's very interesting. I need to dive into that. So if I can find like a
yeah,
book or something, that's something I should probably get on my list.
absolutely. I remember back in the days of playing on Xbox Live, and
Oh
someone
gosh.
said that you're hacking, or like you're using
Mm-hmm.
aimbot or whatever. That was like the highest
Aimbot.
that was the highest compliment. It means you're doing so good. I can't fathom that you're a
Wow.
human. And I've had that a few times, and I was just like, oh, thank you. No, no
Man,
hacks, all skill.
that takes me back. You unlocked a core memory for me, and it wasn't even that long ago, but like, wow. Yeah, that's wild.
Yep.
Um, yeah, and by the way, I was looking, so I think I told you this, but I got approved for surgery at the end of the year, and I'm trying to like find some ways to go ahead and start, preparing the environment and doing all of that. And I looked into getting a Steam Deck because I'm like, oh, a portable way I can play all my Steam games. Those things are like $700 at the cheapest for like not even a terabyte of data. I was like, I might as well just buy like a PlayStation, two PlayStations, so that we can play Grand Theft Auto together, my
Yeah.
husband and I. Like, what?
You should
It's
buy a
wild.
PlayStation now. Get it now.
I know, I know. I need to get on that actually,
Yeah.
especially now that I'm like, oh, the Steam Deck's out. Like, there's no way I'm
Yeah.
buying that. I'll just play PlayStation. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's complete distraction topic. So yeah, we can go back to systemic issues now.
Well, really quick while we're on this distraction topic, I don't know if you heard, GTA 6 is gonna have a thing on Netflix, like basically describing what's going on with the game and just like more information. And then I guess 6 hours later it'll be released on YouTube. So,
Okay.
I think it's at the end of the month. So, hopefully things are happening. Hopefully there's no more delays. Every time they say something about a delay, I think about Robin.
I'm not wrong about this. Like, I'm never wrong about this because Rockstar as a company does this every time. They make
Yeah,
amazing games, but like they come at the cost of the ongoing delays and the frustrations and it's just Rockstar TM.
yeah, yeah. No,
But that's
I
funny.
agree.
I'm glad that I can live rent free in that regard because, I live to make chaos in some people's lives. So I'll accept that. It's good
You are a
chaos.
chaos agent.
It's not
You are.
it is not bad chaos. It's good wholesome family entertainment.
Yep. Um, was there anything else you wanted to say about calling in, calling out?
Oh, yeah. So I actually did want to go into discussion about boundaries within culture
Hmm.
groups. And so I think that that kind of goes into segueing from the calling and calling out. I have to
Hmm.
shift now because now we're, back into like the serious topic. Um, so it's really hard for me as a person who actually naturally compartmentalizes really well
Hmm.
to identify those opportunities where it's like, okay, this should be a within the community conversation, or this should be a within the community way to approach this. And as an outsider, I shouldn't be involved versus when it's okay to do those things, when it's okay to call those things out. And it's going to look
Hmm.
different for me than a lot of people because of my skin color. I realize that. Um, but kind of knowing our role and those are some of those social rules that for me are just a mystery. And so identifying those because we can so easily drift into white saviorism or we can so easily drift into appropriation or some of these other types of harm unintentionally, and so that's what we want to try to avoid as well. So yeah, I'm curious your thoughts and
Yeah. So what I would always start with is, do you have a friend of that community? I'm not saying that every person is a monolith and every community is a monolith and every person
I
can
have
speak
a
for the
black
entire
friend.
community. Exactly. But can you speak to somebody about your concern, about what you think and feel? Can you, or multiple someone's obviously
Yeah,
is preferable, but so that you can kind of gauge their response. How do they feel about it? You perceive harm within a community. What does a community think? You know what I mean? And I think I'm going to speak for Black people specifically. And sometimes like people say people of color, and then they lump Black people into people of color.
right.
But Black people often have I do. I have a problem with being lumped into people of color because the harm isn't done to all people of color equally. The harm is mostly concentrated on Black people. So when we just say like lump Black people into people of color, it disaggregates the harm, or it aggregates the harm, and it says like all everybody's harmed equally, and it's not true. It's not the same way. So for Black people specifically, when it comes to what's going on with us, um sometimes like there's a difference in how you could do it. Like there's this guy, security service Sam, Secret Service Sam on Instagram, who's been doing a lot of great stuff when it comes to talking about the Nolan Wells case, who has
Hmm.
been kind of working like, and also like Nancy Grace came like out of retirement or something to talk about the Nolan Wells case. She's this white woman with a bob that's
Yeah,
always putting
I'm
people.
shocked by that.
Yeah, yeah. So like these are I would call them accomplices or co-conspirators who are getting into it and really helping with the community, bringing things to light. And even like Miss Rachel recently talked about
Oh,
reparations. She like read
yeah.
Ta-Nehisi Coates' article essay, A Case for Reparations, and then she talked about it, right? So I've been talking about reparations for a long time.
Yep.
And my response from saying that she was talking about it was much different than when I talked about it just for myself a year, 2 years, 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So sometimes using your voice can really help the community. But when you're critiquing a community for what they're doing, you have to
Mhm.
be careful when you're not a part of it. Like if I
Yeah.
go and I was invited to speak at WIABA, Women in Behavior
Mm-hmm.
Analysis,
Yeah.
or Women in Applied Behavior Analysis. And I was invited to be a panelist, and I was really honored. But I said that I don't think that it would be right for me to speak at this conference. Let me give you someone I think who's a Black woman who I think could do a good job in my stead, right? Whether or not they pick them
Yeah.
is, up to them. But I wouldn't feel comfortable being on stage, whereas I would feel very comfortable being in the audience if, that's somewhere where they would want
Right.
us men want me. I would love to be in the audience to listen and learn. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
you have to find where and how you fit, and you have to be careful. And I think that it all starts with asking some people or somebody from that community about, hey, what do you think about this? Are you comfortable with talking with me about this? Um, Here's how I was thinking. What do you think about how I was thinking? Because sometimes some conversations are within community, within family conversations, and some are conversations to let out to everybody. And not everything needs to be for everybody in certain cases, and especially not every conversation needs to be for everybody. The conversation I have with my family about family drama doesn't need to be shared on social media or with the public.
Yeah, it
And
does.
I've and you know what I mean, it can have a detrimental, effect.
Right.
I've learned that the hard way. So now, it's about, even if you're not naming names, even if you're just naming the relationship you have to that person, it could be harmful, or they could feel some type of way, it could get to them even if you think nobody's watching. So I think it's just, how to like first just reach out to the people. I think that that's one of the best things that you could do, and that can help inform what and how you move about. um because a lot of times, uh everybody's gonna make mistakes, and they're not gonna do things the right or best way. How they respond or how they change across time is what's, I think, really important to look at.
Oh, yeah, really well said. And I loved your example of Weeba because I've had the same thought because I'll see like I'll see um, presenters being posted, there we go, about at the annual conference, and I'll be like, but that's a man. I thought this was to amplify women, and so I'll have those exact internal conversations where it's like, okay, that person made a choice. And so I don't know the reasons behind that choice, but I would be really curious to know what went on behind that. Now, talking about some of the privilege that can help amplify those voices is a big thing here. We have this conversation in disability communities primarily where, understandably, white disabled persons have more privilege than other disabled persons. And sometimes when it comes to getting the disabled voices out there, we serve as a channel to propel the additional voices forward if we can. There's a lot more visibility now. I will say that things are improving, and I'm really grateful for that because now I'm seeing all types of demographics, all types of intersectionality in the disability community. I feel like in some ways, we're stepping ahead really far in some of that, but then like you see how society as a whole views disability and you realize, oh, well, that's just within your own space versus outside. And I'm sure that you feel the same way when it comes to like race or, others feel that way about, certain other demographics that they have as part of their identity too. It's so complex. And it's so important to kind of work through all of that ideally in groups that can kind of understand and relate, like you said, not just maybe one friend if you have multiple friends that you can consult and kind of talk through those things. So,
Yeah, especially I think that one thing that we have to also include that you just reminded me of is your proximity to power.
yeah.
Where oh, this is what I should do. I should share the wheel of intersectionality.
Yeah, I love the wheel of intersectionality. Love it.
So, oh my God, just click something and something completely different popped up.
That and
Okay,
the
so
emotion wheel. Those are my jams. Love
yeah,
both of those.
same. I really jam with that one as well. So, intersectionality, wheel of privilege. So, the closer you get in, the more privilege you have, the further
Hmm.
out, the less privilege you have, right? The more intersections of privilege you have, it's the closer you are to power. And when you are closer to power, I think it's easier to call those people out. But if you are closer to power and you're trying to call out a community that has less power, then I
Yes.
think we get into a big problem. So we really need to think critically about how we call in and call out and thereby support people when we're trying to, because essentially what you're trying to do is you're trying to support for better practices.
Hmm.
And when we do this, we have to think about what's actually going to get the result we're looking for, or are we just upset and yelling into the void? Which, if that's the case, okay. But if your goal is change, then you're going to have to temper your approach.
Yeah. And as somebody who loves a good visual aid, this is just like perfect. Like my eye is twitching in excitement. This is amazing because I've been trying to kind of work through some of this myself as far as our call outs are concerned with Niraba and
Mm-hmm.
having that visual where it's like, okay, is this person kind of like right in the middle of this wheel, or is this person or group or organization or whatever on the outer skirts of this circle? And so if somebody's on the outer skirts, I may be more inclined to send a direct email and say, hey, I was just kind of curious about this decision. You don't owe me any sort of explanation on this, but I'm just curious. That way, I could discuss this if I need to, if someone were to want to call this out or whatever. So I think that this is so beautifully illustrated. And I love this wheel. I love that you put this to the conversation and put it in a way that makes complete and total sense. So thank
Yes.
you for this.
And one, we did not make this wheel. Two, of
No.
course, it could be improved. Sometimes people
Hmm.
are like very
Yeah.
sticklers for it's not perfect. There's some ways, and like when it comes to salaried, manual labor, unemployed, full-time parent, I think there's also like, you know what I mean, somebody was
Hmm.
convicted of a crime they didn't commit, but it's stuck, and it's going to be difficult for them to find gainful employment. I think that when it comes to skin color, the darker skinned you are, the further away you'll
Yep.
be from proximity of privilege and power. There's a lot of ways we can look at this and we can dissect it and say we need to blah blah blah. Of course, yeah, yeah, yeah. Get your critique out of
Right.
your ass. Um,
Hmm.
it's useful, so we're taking what's useful and we're using it, and then what's not useful we can then improve upon. But if your whole comment is this is the problem, you're not engaging with the value. And that is not a conversation anybody really wants to get into kindly often. You know what I mean? If your whole
Right.
point is critique, sandwich your critique with also what you actually like. Then people are going to come to the conversation differently and you're going to improve in your praxis, I believe. Not saying you have to water down
Absolutely.
your message, but it's just like in this age of the internet, just I see so much just like immediate critique, where it's like, you don't make content. you don't do anything. You don't provide anything, and you just provide critiques. That's a very frustrating thing to receive as the content creator consistently. So
Hmm.
I'll get off that soapbox.
No, you're welcome to stay on that soapbox as long as you need. And to your point earlier about lumping everybody into BIPOC, context is very important here. And if you're basically saying not white, BIPOC is the preferred way to say that. But, the way that it breaks this down on this wheel is exactly what I was thinking as you were talking about this white presenting
Mm-hmm.
BIPOC have more privilege than those. And I would even say, like, under the skin color part, because you have visibly black, brown, indigenous, and Asian. Well, even within that hierarchy, there's still different levels of privilege. And so to
Yeah.
break all of those down is obviously you would have a lot of spaces outside of the wheel that kind of emerged. But, you would also have that for mental health or physical ability. Like I am invisibly disabled and I'm struggling now with like determining, do I need a mobility aid? And is this something that I need whenever it's like extremely hot out? I have a handicapped sticker in my car now that I use in the summer because I can't walk long distances without feeling like I'm going to pass out. And so, but that's different for somebody who's invisibly disabled who is not white. And that there are so many different levels that could be added. And I just think it would be funny to see like some of them be super long and then others not be as long. It would be really funny, but
No,
not
yeah.
funny, but like, real.
Yeah, it'd be real and it'd be helpful. I mean, even like the neurodiversity part, I was thinking as you were talking, there
Mm-hmm.
are different levels
Right.
of unmasked, neurodivergent, intellectually disabled. You know what I mean? So
Yep.
we can't just put them all into one little box. So yeah, we're critiquing. You know what I mean? You can critique. There's
Yeah.
good ways to critique. We're like, this is a really powerful, helpful visual, right?
Yes.
And then we could be like, we could add to it. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think that's
It's
a really
okay to
good
be
way.
critical. It's
Yeah.
absolutely okay to be critical. And that's something I feel like we don't do enough of just in general. Like we tend to take things at face value. Maybe it's just me. I'm autistic. So if you say something to me, I'm going to believe it most of the time, unless I have data or behavior history to suggest you're not
Yeah.
being truthful or you're full of shit. Um, but overall, I'm going to say, okay, well, maybe this is fact, but why did you do it this way, or why wasn't this considered, or so like there's always something in the back of my head, especially as far as like efficiency is concerned, because if it doesn't make sense to me process wise, I'm going to like get into that because as an autistic person, I hate wasting time. Small talk,
Yeah.
inefficient processes, those are my two big pet peeves.
And
Anyway,
then as a PhD, we're also trained to follow our curiosity.
should be
Should be, yeah.
should be.
We should be trained and we should be following that curiosity, have a healthy level of skepticism. Um, and I think that that really helps us understand the world. You know,
Mhm.
as long as you're curious, you're always able to do more research. You're able to find those gaps in the literature. You're able to identify what's not here, what's missing, what needs to be there, what still are we working on. And those things can really be incredibly helpful and beneficial. Hmm, I'm just visuals McGee today, but I saw this one, and I was
Oh,
like, oh, I
great.
love this, you
Mm-hmm.
know, because one of the things that I'm working on in my research is a population gap. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And we have to see that this research hasn't been done with Black people. Okay,
Right.
let's work with Black
It's a
people.
lot of those gaps.
Exactly, and I think it's an easy gap to get at. And there's all types of different gaps that we can kind of identify in research, so we can be like, hey, this is where we should go with this research, so that we can add to the literature base. And that's basically what we have our PhD and sometimes thesis students do.
Mm-hmm. This is beautiful. I'm still like processing and digesting this because it's like it's so great because it breaks down all the different things that, especially if you do like committee work for research students, it's like, okay, these are criticisms I have, but I can like lump them into the different color coded categories. And I love it. As someone who loves color coding, compartmentalizing, it's just, oh, it's so good. I love it.
So make sure you like and subscribe. Comment, leave a comment, reply to a comment. Exactly, exactly. Thank you for watching and ask us questions about what you think. Let us know what you think about all the things we talked about in the comments and what you want us to talk about in the future.